When you think of the greatest military commanders in history, names like Napoleon, Caesar, or Nelson probably come to mind. But there's another name that absolutely belongs on that list, the Korean Admiral Yi Sun-sin. His story is one of an undefeated genius whose biggest battles weren't always against enemy ships.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. Listen to this. A British naval historian, G.A. Ballard, basically said that if anyone could be considered the equal of their own legendary hero, Admiral Nelson, it was Yi Sun-sin. That's some seriously high praise, and it shows you just how respected he is by military minds all over the world. But what makes his story so incredible is that this wasn't some smooth ride to the top. His entire career was this wild roller coaster of unbelievable victories and just devastating setbacks.
So let's get right into it with Chapter 1, his unlikely rise to the top, which is really a story about pure grit in the face of failure and politics. Okay, so Yi came from a family of scholars, but he wanted to be a soldier. His career, though, almost ended before it even started. At age 28, during his very first military exam, he falls off his horse and breaks his leg. Now, most people would be done for the day, right? Not Yi. The story goes he just grabbed a willow branch, made a crude splint, and got back on to finish the test. He still failed, but that tells you everything you need to know about his character. He came back 4 years later, and this time, he passed.
And here's what really defined him from the get-go. His own integrity was his biggest obstacle. There's a famous story where a superior ordered him to chop down some trees on government land, just so the guy could make a personal musical instrument. Yi flat out refused. This kind of stuff, refusing to bend the rules for personal favors, didn't exactly make him popular with the people in charge. So this strict adherence to principle, well, it came back to bite him. Hard. At a border post called Namndanan, he was badly outnumbered, but still managed to fight off a raid. But his commander, who had failed to send him the reinforcements he needed, used Yi as a scapegoat to cover his own butt. The result? Yi was stripped of his rank and forced into what's called Baegwijangun, the ultimate humiliation, serving as a regular foot soldier.
But all of this was just the warm-up. History was about to call his name, and his answer would literally decide the fate of his entire country. And that call came in 1592. Japan launched a massive invasion of Korea. Just look at that number, an initial force of about 160,000 battle-tested samurai and soldiers. It was overwhelming.
On land, it was an absolute catastrophe. The Korean army just melted away, the defenses crumbled, and the king literally fled the capital. The entire nation was teetering on the edge of total collapse. And with the army shattered, Korea's last hope rested with its navy, and with Admiral Yi.
So how on earth did he stand a chance? Through sheer strategic brilliance. See, the Japanese relied on getting their ships close, boarding, and fighting hand-to-hand. Yi's tactics were totally different. He perfected formations like the Hakikjin, or crane wing. He'd pretend to retreat, drawing the enemy fleet into a trap. Then his ships would swing around into this huge U-shape, trapping the Japanese ships inside and just pounding them with cannon fire from all sides. And the Battle of Hansantei? Oh, that was his masterpiece. He lured them in, sprung the crane wing trap, and just annihilated the Japanese fleet. This one battle was a massive turning point. It completely stopped Japan's navy from sailing up the coast to resupply its armies, basically grinding the whole invasion to a halt.
Now, you'd think after a string of victories like that, the guy would be untouchable, right? A national hero. Well, you'd be wrong. Yi's greatest enemy wasn't on the water. It was lurking in the royal court. It's crazy to think about, but his own success actually painted a target on his back. Other commanders, especially his rival Won-gyun, and powerful figures in the government grew incredibly jealous of his fame. So they started to plot against him, whispering rise to a king who was already pretty paranoid. And here's how the setup went down. The Japanese fed some phony intelligence to the court through a double agent. The king, desperate for a big win, ordered Yi to attack, but Yi saw right through it. It was an obvious trap, so he refused the order. And that was the opening his enemies were waiting for. They charged him with insubordination, had him arrested, and dragged him to the capital to be tortured. And the admiral they chose to replace him? None other than Won-gyun, the guy who helped set him up. Won-gyun followed the king's orders, sailed the entire Korean navy straight into the ambush Yi had warned them about, and it was a complete disaster. The entire fleet that Yi had built from scratch was almost completely wiped out.
So, with the Navy gone and the Japanese on the march again, Korea was right back on its knees. In a moment of pure desperation, the king had no choice. He freed Yi and made him admiral again. But an admiral of what? This is where the story becomes the stuff of legend. The government literally told him to just give up on the Navy and go fight on land. Yi's response was epic. He wrote back, "I still have 12 ships." He managed to find one more, bringing the grand total to 13. And their opponent? Look at this chart. A fleet of at least 133 Japanese warships, probably more. The odds weren't just bad, they were impossible. So what do you even say to your men in a situation like that? He gathered his terrified captains and gave them this message. He who is willing to die will live. He who seeks to live will die. He was telling them to turn their fear into a weapon, to fight with the courage of men who had already accepted their fate. And what happened next is almost unbelievable. Using the treacherous, swirling currents of the Myeongnyang Strait as an ally, Yi and his 13 ships sank or crippled over 30 Japanese ships without losing a single one of their own. It was a victory so improbable, it's still studied today as a tactical miracle. After Myeongnyang, Yi began the long process of rebuilding the navy and pushing the Japanese back, battle by battle. The long, brutal war was finally coming to an end, which brings us to the admiral's final, heroic act. By 1598, the Japanese forces were in full retreat, trying to get back home. But Admiral Yi was not about to just let them slip away. He set up one last ambush in the Noryang Strait to deliver a final, crushing blow. In the heat of the battle, as he was beating a war drum to urge his men forward, a stray bullet struck him down. But his final command wasn't about saving himself. It was about winning the battle. He knew if his men saw him fall, their morale would crumble. So his last words were a command to keep his death a secret until victory was certain. His duty came first, right to the very end. I mean, just think about that legacy, an undefeated record in every major battle he ever commanded. He's revered as the man who single-handedly saved his country. His strategies are still required reading in naval academies across the globe. And he was given the posthumous title Cheongmugung, the Lord of Loyal Valor. It's hard to think of a more perfect description. In the end, Admiral Yi's story is so much more than just a list of wins. It's an incredible story of resilience, and it leaves us with a question to really think about. What is the true measure of a hero? Is it just the perfect, undefeated record? Or is it something deeper? That unwavering will to keep going, even in the face of betrayal, disgrace, and absolutely impossible odds.